Okay, so welcome to our latest Brunel Entrepreneurial Network event. I'm very delighted to welcome you today. So I'm Andrew, I work in the Alumni Relations Office at Brunel. So I'm going to start with some very quick housekeeping, just to let you know that this session is being recorded and we will be sharing it on the Brunel Entrepreneurial Network following the event. So anyone who isn't able to join us today will be able to access the event as well. If you can ensure that you're on mute, just so that you don't interrupt Yommy whilst he's speaking, there will be opportunities for questions as Yommy presents throughout the day, throughout the 45 minutes, and there'll also be an opportunity for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, then you can put them in the chat as you're going as well, just so that Yommy can see the type of questions that are being asked. So as you all know, the Brunel Entrepreneurial Network is a place for our alumni entrepreneurs to share their successes, network with others, and join live events like we have today. And I'm delighted to introduce Yommy to you. So Yommy is one of our Brunel graduates. Yommy graduated back in 2008 from a financial computing degree. And today Yommy is going to talk to us about bringing a business idea to life as a non-technical entrepreneur. So over to you, Yommy.
Thank you so much, yeah, and thanks Andrew, Kirsty, Karen, Hills, and Emily, and everyone in the Entrepreneur Hub. So I'm gonna start by sharing my screen because it will be a lot easier to show what I'm talking about. But yeah, generally, I'm really excited to just have the opportunity to kind of like come give back. And I remember when I was at university, I don't feel like I used half as much of the opportunities and resources that if I could go back, I definitely would have. So, you know, as you do, you grow up, you learn more, and you reflect. So this is definitely reflective for me as well. And just thinking about how much time has passed since I left university and was in John Crank and all of that. So yeah, like just to kind of a bit summary, my name's Yommy. And some people call me James as well. But I essentially help existing businesses who want to streamline their operations to create room for growth. And I use low-code tools as well. But this isn't really about me today. It's really about how you can bring a business idea to life as a non-technical entrepreneur. And today's structure is going to look a little bit like this. So a little bit of an introduction, a bit about me and my experience. By the way, if you see me turning to the right, it's just because my slides are on my right as well. Just to have a checkpoint, and solving a market problem using an app. And I'll do a little bit of a demo. There will be time for questions at the end. If you've got questions, feel free to use the chat as well. I'm going to stop and pause at a few points as well, just to mix it up. And we'll close, and then everyone can have a bit more time back for their lunch. So hopefully that works for everyone. So to kind of start off with, and like the key thing is like 90% of entrepreneurs essentially fail to build a product that the market wants. And this is true for a number of reasons, but essentially a lot of times, when we talk about the tech space, it's just really failing to solve an important problem for a particular user or a particular group of users who have similar needs, and figuring that out. And it's so funny because even recently, a lot of times, when I'm speaking to people who are, they're really passionate, they've got a problem, a pain point, or a fear that they want to solve. I really feel that the biggest thing that's holding them back is just getting that level of insight of the customer problems. They're relying on a lot of third-party secondary data collected by different reports, but they're failing to really just hop on a call and really listen to that person's problems. And if they do figure out or manage to understand what those problems are, they fail to figure out a scalable way to kind of like uncover that repeatable growth. So they might have one good year and they've kept a little bit of money in the business, but a lot of people can't answer that question of, well, if I had 8 orders in peak time summer, what can I do to get to 80? And a lot of times what you find out is it's a lot of operational challenges. It means that they might need to hire a lot more staff, and that's going to introduce a lot more expenses and costs into your business. Or they might not be able to, they might feel like every single client, they need to tailor each and every single product or service to different needs. And another big thing that I think holds a lot of us back, and it was myself included, was most of us don't feel like we have the technical skills to even build what we need to build without a designer or a developer. So these are like the top three things that we see. And what we find is that, you know, really smart entrepreneurs, and if you know this now, like I think you're definitely way ahead of the curve, is just really understanding that, you know, you're having good margins, you know, thinking about profit. So not just how much money have I made, but, you know, once I remove like the costs of doing business, how much net profit do I have? Now, the Scale Up Index did a report on this, and they said software as a service companies, and that just essentially means if you think of any software you use where there's a subscription involved, like Netflix or Dropbox or Spotify, something where if you stopped paying for your direct debit, they'd probably cut off your service or let you know that it's about to cut off. They in the UK had 20% more growth in annual turnover than any other sector as well. And so this kind of just shows you the really big potential when you look on the news and online and you hear a lot of companies talking about tech being big. If you really read through the lines and you see where a lot of the funding is going, it's this category of type of customers. I'm just going to turn that off because it shouldn't have been on, but it's just this kind of category of kind of business, you know, called software as a service. So if you're on, you know, Google, you can definitely read more about that, but I wanted to share that. Software as a service, and you might also see it referred to as SaaS, is really the best way to get predictable revenue. Now, you know, if you're on your computer, take a screenshot of this, but essentially these are like some terms, and I didn't really want to confuse with any of the technical jargon, but these are the type of terms that, you know, really sophisticated investors are looking at. They're looking at revenue that grows year over year and just has that smooth curve, as opposed to a business that's going, you know, having high peaks and troughs. And what you tend to find is that if you've got a subscription type service, how many of us like cancel our Netflix subscription? Like, I remember one time I tried to cancel my Amazon Prime subscription, and the next time I wanted to make an order, they said it was going to cost more to make that delivery order than if I kept my Amazon Prime subscription. So you can guess what happened. A couple of days later, I was back with my Amazon Prime subscription. So we know that once you've got a direct debit, and any of you who are really frugal budgeters will probably look and say, oh my days, I've been paying for something for 6 months. I even forgot I had it. But these are the kind of business models that are really attractive to investors. And when you think about, you know, some margins here, like these are just some of the data points, you know, Uber, Lyft, Peloton, you know, Sonos speakers, these type of businesses have 40 to 50% more gross margin. So like than other businesses in their categories. And like, even though a lot of non-SaaS businesses can grow larger, you're targeting like a lot of different types of markets as well. So like the key thing here is like just that predictability and revenue, and every type of accountant, investor, you know, people that want to partner with can easily look at your business and just see that growth. They don't need to worry about anything else because it's all kind of factored in there. So definitely a good one to learn more about. In terms of tech, and I kind of said this before, this is the dominant, you know, subscription model, like top dominant startup model within the industry. So this is like the pay-per-use model where if you're not paying for it, you know, you don't end up using it as well. And it just helps you to, you know, to just kind of like have a business where people are actually paying, you're not, you know, for usage, and, you know, you can have one version that improves for everyone else. So one type of product that everyone can use as well. So again, I just thought I'd share some stats as well around this sort of stuff. So the key summary here is like you get secure, stable cash flow that's consistent, and compared to many other industries, which is really difficult, you know, to project for 2 years, especially if you think about a pandemic. This is like the kind of business model that's really attractive to kind of businesses. And I wish I was in your shoes as like a student entrepreneur, because if I knew this now, and I was quite, you know, witty and creative and thinking about different ideas, and, you know, even in my adult years, I made a lot of mistakes, but just having that time, that thinking space, being around other supportive networks, just being able to hone in and focus and maybe like focus on something for 3 months and really give a shot and take a, you know, take a very smart, calculated risk. I wish I had that level of insight at the age you're at now, or at the stage of where you are in your journey as well. So I just wanted to share that. And here's a few articles. I'll whiz through some of these, but this is Forbes talking about why investors love SaaS companies as well. This was in June this year. This is TechCrunch as well, why SaaS is bucking the venture slowdown as well. It's like, even though money's drying up, SaaS continues to still do well as a business model. And yeah, that's a bit of a introduction. So what you're going to learn today as we go on a little bit more is like how to design a subscription or pay-per-use product, or why you don't really have to be technical or be like the smartest developer, and what you can do to really get started today. And what I wanted to just whiz through, because it's not really about me, but just so you know who I am sitting in front of you, this is like my journey of how I went from not being technical to building multiple apps. I essentially started off trying to wrangle my head with like Stack Overflow and Udemy and Coursera, and just trying to learn HTML and CSS. And then I remember when I got to JavaScript, I was like, oh my days, like there's this async and synchronous stuff, like it just really bucked me in my trends. And then I found out about this thing called no code, which is essentially like drag and drop builders. So if you've ever built a Wix website or a Squarespace website where you can just imagine just dragging in a button and then the button's there rather than having to write like 4 lines of code, or imagine just being able to like, pick an input box from the side. Now, why, a lot of this technology and, these kind of elements have been around for years. So why is it that when everyone always wants to start a new project, they just start, writing loads of code? So a lot of there's tools out there that have been developed now that really abstract a lot of these complexity, and they allow you to just really get started. So here's a little gif of like something I was able to kind of like build really quickly, and people can essentially put a start date, define a goal, save it, just edit it. These are the kind of things that you're able to do. You can add initiatives, you can add end dates, you can add progress bars, you can delete things, and behind this is a database, your own database of data, your own database of fields and attributes, so you can get really smart and clever with a lot of the insights behind some of this stuff as well. So we'll get into a bit more of the demos a little bit later as well. But yeah, I thought this was a cool slide because that's exactly how I felt like that guy on the left after I was trying things the hard way. So yeah, like I said, in the beginning, I heard a lot of horror stories about working with developers. So I thought about learning to code myself. Someone I knew built something really quickly in the weekend, and he was like, yeah, like I've got my first version out. I'm gonna try testing out different marketing. And then I just decided to do differently. I just had that like kind of light bulb moment, and then I built up my first ever app using no code in 3 days. I even blogged about it. I was on a trip to Ghana, and it was just quite impressive, like being in this WhatsApp group. I really wanted to kind of like stand out amongst this group of 250 people, and everyone was talking about all of these different places they wanted to visit, and the different events they wanted to go to, and the different pieces of art they wanted to learn about, and the different pieces of history, and where everyone wanted to meet to eat. And I just kind of like put this list into a Google sheet, and then I used the tool to kind of like build this kind of like mobile app where everyone who was on the trip could actually use it, and it just made me really popular within that group. And I just remember that moment, like everyone was kind of reaching out to me, trying to pitch to me to be a developer. I was like, whoa, I'm not even a developer. I just built this using these drag and drop tools. But, that was like my first light bulb moment, and really that gave me that confidence and validation that this is something that people found interesting. So now I just kind of like guide non-technical people who have a growing or like kind of like customer base to have automations and just systemize that process as well. So yeah, just to kind of like, if you've listened to this so far and you're just thinking, so who's this for? Like, this is not for engineers and coders. I'm sure some of you are on the call, because there's always a few, and saying, yeah, I could like, what tool are you using? I could build something like more comprehensive, and it's got artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm 100% sure you can. This is not for you, because you probably want to be able to do more. This is for people who understand the importance of getting to market quickly, getting, you know, like I said at the beginning, 90% of business models fail. So the most important thing you can do is get your idea, create a first version, put it into the hands of the people that you want to serve, and really test and see how it works for them and observe how they use it. And a lot of these elements like calendars and buttons and input fields and search boxes and a lot of these different tools have already been created for you. So why do you have to reinvent the wheel? You can just play around with what data you want to feed into it and the look and feel. So yeah. So quick question. I thought I'd pause there. I did say this was going to be an interactive session. And please use the chat. I'm probably going to spend a minute on this, but just wanted to know in the room, who's ever either hired developers or launched an app? Like just say hired in the chat or launched, you know, or built. Just use that keyword if you've ever done any of those things. It would just be really interesting to see. And if I don't get any responses, I'm going to assume that everybody here is like brand new to this, like has no idea. But I'm really curious to know if anyone's ever like hired a developer in any shape or form, even if it was your mate in uni and you just kind of like strong-armed him into developing a project for you for a week or a couple of weeks. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean you had to pay money or, you know, somehow you built an app. Maybe you've got a process that's slicker than mine. It's always good to learn. Or you built something yourself. I'm just really curious to see if there's anyone in the room that's done anything as far as this, or, you know, am I really showing this new approach to people in a brand new way? So I'm just really curious. I'll give it like 20 more seconds and see if someone's like still trying to get their mouse to work or keyboard. Brilliant, fun. All right, cool. So these are the ways that people build today. And I don't know how people would build now, but a lot of people try to find a technical expert, you know, and this might be a lot easier if you're in university. So one big tip I'll give you for free, because I've seen a lot of people in their adult years try and find technical people, but if you're like the kind of like loud bravado person, someone that's really good with the room, like, you know, really enthusiastic, and you've got someone who's quiet, you know, but really technical, make friends. You know, you don't have, not all your friends need to be like you, but, you know, try and have a mix of people that you hang around with, because that person might be the next Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, and I bet you your bottom dollar you're gonna want to make sure, you know, you're gonna want to know that you was friends with them. But in all seriousness, I think a lot of people try to find someone technical. A lot of people use a website called Upwork, and you end up tending to get freelancers from all different parts of the world, across different regions in different developed countries, or some less developed. And a lot of times, a lot of people say there's like language barriers there and they struggle to get on the same page. If you did what I tried to do, you know, spending months on Code Academy, Stack Overflow, just trying to learn the basics. And then when you feel like you've got it all and you realize that, oh, I need this to work this way, you've got to do it, spend another month or 6 weeks to try and figure out how to build something, you know, else, or different component parts. So I like this image on the right because it definitely feels like how me and a lot of people felt. It's like, yeah, like, you know, we're going to change the world, we're going to break things and, you know, move fast. And, you know, you've got this plan of hopping on your road bike and heading to the finish line. And then you find out that it's more like a Tough Mudder challenge, and you've got all different parts to kind of navigate as well. So that's what the real world looks like. And if you haven't experienced it yet, don't worry. You know, if you're a really ambitious budding entrepreneur, you'll find this along the way. So one thing that so I've worked in startups and scale ups. I've driven growth in online marketplaces, consumer products, businesses, you know, really taking it from 0 to 1. And I'll share with you some of the top tips that really helped me. So definitely take, if you've got a pen and paper next to you, definitely take this down or take some screenshots, because these are some of the things that I think, you know, I was even saying to my younger cousin the other day, are some of the things that will really get you ahead. So the first question I want to ask before I jump into it, to see if there's anyone here who's got some smart ideas. I know we've got some people whose brains are sharper than mine. I'm just going to stop here for a minute and ask, how would you find a good market today? And I'll be so surprised if I don't get any answers from the Entrepreneurship Hub at Brunel. How would you find a good market to go after? Feel free to use the chat, or if you want to be heard, like, you can come off mute for a minute. I just really want to know, like, how do you find a good market? Thank you, John. Do your research. I love that. And John, that was such a good answer. I would love to, like, if you could tell me more, like, what are you researching for when you say do your research? Thanks, Andrew. Financial performance over the last few years, that is a really good one as well. I think that's definitely one element as well, something to think about as well. You'd probably see, obviously, the past, it doesn't predict the future, because let's say, for example, if you had a brick and mortar business in lockdown, that performance could have been really good, and you might have been in for a big surprise as well. Or if you're looking at Facebook, aka Meta, which I don't know if people are fond of these days, some people are, some people aren't. Definitely really good for the community side and the groups, but they spoke about cutting 5% of their workforce. So we're not sure what's going to happen with the metaverse. So things are always changing. You've always got to look a few steps ahead and, take the past. John said current competitors definitely exist. And I think there's an interesting thing with current competitors, because there's also existing alternatives. If you're a gym, you'd be forgiven for thinking that maybe David Bannatyne and Pure Gym and Fitness First are your only competitors. But what about the influencers on Instagram that are, doing lives and, telling people how to do like tummy crunches and stuff? They might take some of your customers. Or potential gaps in niches. Niches is a big thing I learned about this year. You can't serve everyone, as much as everyone says, yeah, my customers are everyone. It's not. You have to find your niche, and profit margin is very important. Cost to set up in that industry, that's very important. Bolarinwa, he said studying the strong relationship between human wants and values. That is very true. I love that, and that definitely taps into demand. I was listening to a podcast yesterday about human behavior. That is very interesting. You can design really good products around that. They talk about the happy chemicals as well. That's the area that I'm really fascinated about as well. So thanks for sharing that. Ramesh said, people complaining about your poor service. Yeah, and I think even people complaining about your competitors' poor service might be an opportunity for growth. And like what Emily said, is there a need or a want for your idea as well? And how do you actually know that? So thanks everyone for sharing in that. So these are like my top tips around that. So, and I think a lot of this ties into some of the stuff that Andrew was saying. Like, it's a function of your own economics. Like, you really want to have lower costs. Everyone can say let's have big teams, but if you had a bad month or two, that can really wipe out some of your profits. So you need to take into consideration your economics. And I think the best way to size a market, especially if you're not funded by a big investor like a venture capital and that tends to fund startups and scale ups, is to think about what people spend in that category. Like, how much do people spend a year on shoes or on trainers or on subscription services? Like, I always say, if I could find out what everyone's subscriptions were on my streets, I'd probably know exactly what business to start, because I'd know where they're putting their money in already, and where you could take market share. Competitive markets are really good as well. I know a lot of people are like, oh, there's one person in the world doing what I'm doing, damn, I can't do it. No, that's not the case. Like, there's not only one off license in the world. Like, there's an off license on every street, so you can serve different people, and you can be differentiated in different ways. Some people buy into people for different reasons. And then again, do you have enough passion and skill to compete? Like, do you treat this as a sport, as a game, or you just there to make a quick buck? And I think that those kind of things kind of like you know, make the difference. And then at the end of the day, the fuel in your car is your customers. If you lose sight of that, you get to even like, you know, your investors, your mentors, like all of these people, like, you know, they can play any role in your business, but the lead role is going to be your customers. You need to keep them happy to kind of keep the lights on. And the moment you lose sight of that, you know, you might start losing market share to someone else who's doing it better. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. But a big tip for, like, especially if you're not funded or start like got a big venture capital or angel investor behind you, is just to start small. And I think this is like something that really works for me and a few people I know, which is start small by solving a problem for yourself or someone you care about, and then look for other signs that people are speaking about these problems openly on, like, Facebook groups or forums or LinkedIn or IG comments, like, or Reddit. Like, really look for this, for the clues, you know. But if you can solve that problem for yourself or someone else, even if it's like you made a training for yourself or your sister or someone else, or, you know, your sister had this problem or your brother had this problem and you solved that, then you can start to say, oh, you know, if it works for us, if it works for my 5 friends, you know, how can I do this for my local community? How can I do this for my borough, for my region? You know, that's a really good way to start. Also think about if the market's growing or dying. Like, you know, you can look at Google Trends. Google has all the data because it takes all the searches, and you can really look for the higher highs or the lower lows on the charts as well. And then also, like, think about, are you playing to your strengths? If you're constantly having to rely on other people outside of your team, or if you don't have the skills in your team, it might be really difficult to continue to do that without much pain. So just think about, you know, what are the things that you or your team are really good at that other people struggle with as well. So these are like top tips that I wanted to share around that. So, and I like to say this a lot, but all of these things are good in theory. Like, you know, we've said a few things here, but how do you stop speculating and just get out the door? Like, how do you get out there? So I'll come back to some of these tips as well, because I think these are going to be really good at the end. But what I wanted to do is show a little bit of a demo. So I'm going to whip out this tool that I've been talking about that makes it easier for non-technical people to kind of get started on building, and just kind of really show you live what that looks like. So give me a second, let me get that up. Thanks for being patient with me. So I'm going to show you inside of a tool that is really good for building internal apps and tools, which is called Bubble. So I was not joking when I said you can build things drag and drop. So I can say here, let's see if it's coming up here. So just make this page responsive. Cool. All right. So as you can see here, I can make this button, and let's take this button outside of this group. Just clicked a little bit too fast. There we are. So I wanted this button to be right in the middle of the page, and I could say, start your order. And I could say, actually, I want this button to be black. I think it's just the latency of my video, but I could say I want this button to be black, you know, with white text. And I could say I want it to be 16 pixels, and I could say I want it to be a bit more bold. And I could go back and say, actually, this button is not large enough. I might say, let's make it 180 pixels. And I might center it in the page like this. So these are like the kind of things you can do with a design. You know, you can add, for example, let's say you want to put an input box. So you might click on one of the input forms and say, you know, I want someone to say here, please enter your, please type your order, and that could just be there as well. So you might also say, when I click the button, I want it to start an action. I want it to create some data, or I want it to make a payment, or I want to send an email. These are things that you can just do, or I want it to go to another page, for example. So these are things that you can just put little commands you can tell this button. And as you can see, I haven't written any single line of code just to do that. So obviously I'm just playing around with some of these elements, but I thought I'd show you what some of the stuff can look like as well. A lot of the client apps, the really cool ones that we built, obviously they've been protected by contracts, so we can't actually show them. But you can see today it pulls in today's date. It says welcome back. This is some data in a database that it pulls in. What might be really cool actually is if I show you the data that's behind it, so you can kind of see some of the power of just connecting to different apps as well. So let me do that. And then you can kind of see a little bit about why this is really powerful. Yeah, and then another thing as well, when you're building like subscription-based apps, it's just about really designing that journey and thinking about, do people use it daily, weekly, monthly? So a lot of the just kind of like different user behaviors and patterns. So as you can see here, like this is Airtable. If you've never used Airtable before, it's an amazing no-code tool. It's essentially it's a spreadsheet that behaves like a database. And you can see this says 20 Lewisham Way. So let's say, I forgot what road Brunel was on, but I'm just gonna put 120 Brunel Way. And I'm just gonna put here 15 Uxbridge Avenue. So this is an external database, not linked to the bubble tool that I've used. And let's just change the revenue. Let's say we're going to make that 67 million. In fact, I'm just going to put some numbers there because I now got some rounding. So if I refresh this, that's the 20 Brunel Way, that's the 15 Uxbridge Avenue, and that's the revenue here as well. So you can see that data is pulling in from another system and tool. And the reason I showed you that is because you can pull in information from task management systems, email series, like tools like Airtable, essentially anything that has a connection, which is something we call an API, but an API, just to save all the technical jargon, is just a way that two tools communicate with each other, and then they make it easy to create, read, update, or delete data. So that's how they talk to each other as well. So yeah, I'll just get back to my presentation. And I just wanted to know, before I jump into the big questions, if there's anything on this that anyone had any questions about. And feel free to like either come off mute or put it in the chat. Okay, cool. So almost at the end of the presentation, but I did want to leave a chance for questions before I share that last slide as well. I feel like I've covered quite a lot, like from the start to the end. And I just wanted to know, like, if anyone had any questions, like if you're thinking about building a tool that's scalable, like what questions would you have around this kind of process as well? And I'll leave this slide up as well. So this, by the way, is a link, and I'll say this is a gift because I'm pretty sure you're not going to find it anywhere else. Like if you screenshot this or copy that, yeah, screenshot this and just kind of like type that link up. I made it a short link because it's easier to to access. I've shared like I literally handcrafted a database of so many free tools that were out there. And when I was really on this journey, I was like, oh my days, there's a tool for this, there's a tool for this, there's a tool for this. And I really kept that organized. Like if you go in there, you'll see a bunch of tools that can get you started as well. I also do like a weekly newsletter as well. So I just kind of share my thoughts around business models and databases and these systems and these kind of tools, but constantly thinking about the mindset of how do you create an experience that's appropriate and good for your customers in a way that drives business results. And I'm constantly engaging with that, and I've been writing for like 5 years, and I love doing that as well. So definitely sign up to that as well. And yeah, I think the top tips I'd say for anyone, and these are hard lessons for myself to learn, but is keep your costs low and make sure you focus on getting paying customers. Build a basic end-to-end experience. You just want to get to the market quickly with your first version. You can always build on top, but the most important thing is not to put too many features, too many assumptions into whatever you're building. You can observe the user behavior and experiment on distribution channels. This was like probably the hardest thing for me to really figure out, because it doesn't matter if you've got the best book. I'll use this analogy, but it doesn't matter if there's the best book in your library if no one knows it exists. It could be right in the middle of the library, but no one might know about it. So you've got to like get yourself in front of your target customers, and that might be Instagram, that might be LinkedIn, that might be Reddit, that might be TikTok, that might be Clubhouse. Like there's different ways to reach people. It might be WhatsApp stories, it might be WhatsApp groups, little Slack communities, Discord. Like there's a lot of ways to kind of get in front of the people that you want to reach, and the level of insight that you want to gather. You need to be able to understand their problems and pain points, really communicate in a language that's comprehensible to who you're trying to reach, and be willing to change in the face of evidence. I've had to do that myself even this year, where I thought a particular type of customer was really good for us, and I realized that actually they weren't. They were a bit too early in their journey. They hadn't experienced a problem, and as a result, we could never really like get on the same page with them. So you have to be willing to change in the face of evidence, and I'd say that's probably the hardest thing for most people as well. But yeah, Andrew, I don't know if you've got any.
Yeah, I've got a question, Yommy. So that was really great, and I really liked it when you said, if I knew this when I started out in my journey. And I just think when you take that opportunity to reflect on everything that you've been through, from when you started out to where you are now. And I think that when you showed that picture of the road cycle to the kind of tough mudder situation, I think probably you've had a lot of highs and lows on that journey, and it would be really, I think, to celebrate the successes. I'd love to hear one of those real good moments that you felt you can celebrate from your last from your time since you started doing this. What is your best moment?
Yeah, I think the biggest moment, and now I understand why shopkeepers like frame that old crinkly £20 note in their shops, because I think it was that, and I feel emotional thinking about this, but it's that first moment of belief you get when someone pays you for your service. Like I'm not the kind of person that, really feels, and I know some people are different. I don't feel good about taking someone's money if I don't feel like I've done a good job. Like so for me, for my friend to believe in me, and it's almost funny because when I really tear back through everything, I think she probably would have bought anything from me, but as long as like I could clearly explain the value to her. But she kind of just believed in me. So that was like my first moment. Like, when they talk about getting your first paying customer, your first 10 paying customers, like that was a really important moment. And I think that's also important. Like any entrepreneur business person will tell you this, like, you need, that's why so many people are big on reviews. You need to get the testimonials, you need to get the transformation stories out there. And that felt really good. It was easier to get my second customer after that, you know, and I just had a lot more confidence. And then it was easier to get my third customer. And then I think when you start to think about actually, like I mentioned that I had to go through like be willing to change in the face of evidence. So my first 3 customers were for particular type of customer. And then when I started realizing, this segment does really well, like, you know, they're at the level of their journey where we can help them. I now needed to get testimonials for those kind of customers. But, you know, and I'm actually testing an app this week that's going to launch. And I'm so excited to get that out there because it's like, I can't wait to share that story with more people. So those are like the highs, you know, and I think of the journey as well. Yeah.
You'll definitely have to keep us updated with how you get on because they sound fantastic. And we've had a couple of questions come in through a chat. So what I'll do, I'll give them to you and you can answer them. So
thanks.
So first question, how do you make sure that your product or service is not copied from your customers?
Great question. I'm probably because I haven't got the legal background, but I'm, as you can probably tell, I'm of that mindset of get out in the market and just kind of get going. So there's a big thing in the startup space where they say, like, you know, in other industries, people love to do NDAs and all of that, but I'm kind of saying the opposite. You need more people to get out there and even know you exist. So I do think there are times where you need to like think about your intellectual property. I can't give legal advice on that. And I do think there are times where, you know, you need to protect your basically like your, you know, your copyright and those kind of things. However, I'm not a fan of like saying I'm not going to say anything to anyone. Like, I'm actually the opposite. I think you should tell everyone. And unfortunately, if you move too slow or you're not good enough, you know, if you can't keep your customers happy or, you know, they don't want to renew with you, then I just don't think you've got a good business. So I think there are things you can do to, you know, lower the barriers of entry of people like taking away business from you. And that's brand loyalty. That's building a community, you know, that's building that trust. That's what makes it difficult to compare you, you know? So it's like, yeah, like, you know, anyone could build a business, but, you know, maybe not everyone is, and I don't want to pronounce your name wrong, but I'll just use VAS as a shorthand. But, you know, yeah, you can buy from anyone, but you can't always get VAS. You know, that's the kind of mindset that I have, which is, you know, get out there, don't be shy to talk about your idea, even if you haven't got there, because you will get validation and feedback just from speaking to people. And then you need to be willing to change in the face of evidence and quickly and kind of get going. I think, you know, you probably don't need to worry about that too much when you know, for your first customer, 10 customer, maybe when you're getting to 50 and 100, and there isn't a science around this. But once you've got a little bit of money in the bank, you know, definitely pay solicitors, definitely pay lawyers, definitely file on the gov.uk for like trademark and copyright. Those things will really protect your business. But I just don't believe in, you know, staying in a room and not telling anyone about it. So yeah.
Thanks, Yommy. And I quite like this question because it probably follows on from what you're saying about just getting out there. Would you ever offer anything for free to test your service? And perhaps to what extent would you do it if you were to say yes?
100%, 100%, 100%. I had to battle this a lot as well. There's a book called The Curve, and it basically says, like, this day and age, a lot of stuff is getting given away for free on IG, on YouTube. So it is a competitive advantage. It gives you awareness as well. Free is definitely a good part of your business model because it just manages objections, but just kind of keep it to the level where it kind of works for you, for your time and resources. So I think everyone should give a little bit of something for free. But it doesn't mean that you can have a business giving everything for free. You need to keep, you know, the lights on as well. So that's the short answer.
Okay, and thanks again. The last question before we close up, what platforms have worked best for you to engage with an audience?
Me personally, LinkedIn is really undertapped. I think I need to use it more, but I'm just kind of going through a positioning as well. Instagram, I had a lot of good coaching. So I managed to kind of do really well with Instagram as well. And, you know, my newsletter, I'd get a one-to-one relationship with my customers. And yeah, I think those 3 things kicked me off. I've had a little bit of good stuff on Twitter, but I feel like the algorithm always changes as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just before we close up, you say that you want to use LinkedIn more. That is where we host our Brunel Entrepreneurial Network. So anyone who's not in the group already, please make sure that you join. We can share those details after the call. Yommy has also shared his email address in the chat. So if you'd like to get in touch with Yommy personally to maybe discuss anything that you're thinking about launching and you want to perhaps talk to Yommy and get his advice, his contact details are there. But lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us this afternoon and for participating. It's been fantastic hearing from you, Yommy, and I appreciate the time that you've taken to prepare the presentation and share your advice with the Brunel Entrepreneurial Network. So thank you very much. Any closing words, Yommy?
No, thank you all so much. And again, I can't say so much. It does feel emotional just to be able to kind of like come back on the other side as well. So yeah, thanks Andrew, Kirsty, Howes, Karen, Emily, like thanks everyone in the Entrepreneur Hub. And like, yeah, I've enjoyed being part of the student experience.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll close it there. Thanks for joining. Have a great rest of the day.